Okay, so how do they compare? How does the SPUI alternative on this project compare to the PFI? Well, there you go. The SPUI has not one benefit over the PFI. This is a table of important selection factors. All of the factors that I've listed here above this heavy gray line, they had included, FDOT included in their feasibility study, and can be found in an evaluation matrix that they showed to the public at their one public meeting. They're supposed to have 20 public meetings and they had one. All of these selection factors I've listed below this gray line, I've added and believe that they should have been included. But you can see that none of them does the SPUI provide the better option. All of them are the PFI is the better alternative. So the first and foremost selection factor is level service, because that's the purpose of the damn project. The whole purpose of this project is to meet future traffic demand. That's the purpose and need of the project in their environmental document, to meet future traffic. And the SPUI is going to be level service F, a severe F. The bridge is great. There's no delay on the bridge at all. US 41 is a parking lot. You'd never know that from FDOT's presentations, from how they talk about the alternatives. You would never know that there's congestion on US 41 with the SPUI. They just ignore it. They just omit it from everything. And the MPO board, same thing. They just ignore the fact that 41 is going to be severely congested. They don't care. As far as they're concerned, the people who use 41, they're peasants. The people who use 54, those are people who matter because they're going to be spending money in Newport Richey. Tourists, people that come to the area to play golf, snowbirds, that crowd. The country club set in Pasco County, they'll be using 54, they'll be using the bridge. We don't want them to be delayed. But everybody that's working, that commutes to Tampa twice a day, they could be stuck there as much as 20 minutes waiting to get through the signal at the SPUI. Twice a day. They don't care. They don't care. Whereas at the PFI, it's 1 minute. 1 minute of delay versus 20 minutes of delay. The next factor here is impact on community. Well, the SPUI is going to be 1.25 miles of retaining wall and bridge versus the PFI, which is no bridge, no retaining walls. I mean, this is not, this area where this intersection is located, Land O'Lakes, this is not urban jungle with concrete everywhere. It's not a concrete jungle. It's open. There's no big structures. Tallest building is 2 stories, I think, maybe 3. It's more suburban, almost pastoral, and they're going to build this monstrosity, which is going to have a big visual impact on the area. It's going to impact the community. FDOT's mission is to minimize impacts on the community, except when it's convenient for them not to. User benefit. So their analysis in their evaluation matrix, they show the PFI provides a $48 million per year added user benefit over the SPUI. So user benefit is measured in terms of delay and fuel consumption. So how much time people spend stuck at the signal, okay, the user benefit is minimizing that. So they have it, the PFI providing an added annual user benefit of $48 million a year over the SPUI. If they had analyzed the SPUI competently, correctly, properly, which they didn't do, over my repeated objections, and if they had designed the PFI correctly and signalized it correctly, which they didn't do, over my repeated objections, that difference would be double that. The PFI benefit to people using the intersection, driving through it, would be more like $100 million a year. I believe it would be double theirs, which over a 20-year period, which is the service life of the PFI, that's $2 billion user benefit. The PFI versus the SPUI. The SPUI structure is going to be there 50 years. That's the FDOT's functional life of a bridge is 50 years. Well, that's $5 billion user benefit in current dollars. Next is noise. The SPUI is noisier than the PFI. That's their analysis. Project cost. They have estimated the SPUI at $222 million in project cost. Project cost is engineering, right-of-way, utility relocations, and construction engineering. That's project cost. They have estimated the SPUI at $222 million. The PFI they estimated at $108 million. My fee would be $57 million, which is 50% the difference. So the difference between the SPUI project cost and the PFI project cost, not including my fee, $114 million. So the SPUI is $114 million more to build than the PFI, and I was seeking by this time 50% of that difference. So I get $57 million. That's what they've cost me by selecting the SPUI. They cost me and my family $57 million. They've cost the taxpayers $57 million plus life cycle cost. They've cost the public $100 million a year in delay and fuel consumption. They don't care. Right away required. The PFI, less than half what is needed for the SPUI. Less than half the number of parcels than the SPUI. Relocations. Again, PFI is better. Less than, well, almost half of the business relocations of that of the SPUI. And there should be no residential relocations with the PFI. 3 with the SPUI. Least impact on access. SPUI is going to have a high impact on access. Not that you'd ever know from their presentation. And the PFI, properly designed, properly signalized, should have a low impact on access. That's property access and access to local roads. The reason that the SPUI is high is congestion, which they ignore. Somehow in their minds, the 41 gets no congestion. There's nothing there. There's no congestion, except that if you design it, if you model it correctly with VSIM, analyze it correctly in VSIM, you get miles of congestion. You get 3 miles of vehicle queues at the SPUI signal. And that impacts access. Because even if there's a driveway that is directly off the road that you can access by just turning into it, if there's a 3-mile queue of cars, well, that has an impact on access. But they just don't acknowledge that. And why would they? They don't drive there. These FDOT bureaucrats, they don't drive through that intersection. So why should they care? Impact on floodplains, PFI, much less. Impact on wetlands, PFI, much less. So in all of their selection criteria, from their evaluation matrix, the PFI scores best by a lot. And then I added these, which they excluded or omitted or just didn't include from their study. Pedestrian safety. You'd think that would be an important factor. It's normally considered. I did in my past projects. Pedestrian safety. There's no question the PFI is safe for pedestrians, because for the SPUI signal on 41, pedestrians have to cross 9 lanes in a single crossing. 9 lanes with 5 vehicle pedestrian conflict points. That's 5 different directions in that one crossing. A pedestrian can be struck by a vehicle. Right? You got the through movements both ways. You've got a left turn, and then you've got another left turn, and then you got a U-turn. It's 5. 5 different directions of a pedestrian can be struck as they cross 9 lanes. But somehow that's safer than the PFI in their minds. That's safer than the PFI, which has the maximum of 4 lanes if they add the auxiliary through lane, which they needed to add and didn't. 4 lanes to cross, and traffic's coming from only one direction. There's no question the PFI is safer for pedestrians. It's absolutely indisputable. Again, you never know it from the way FDOT and the MPO board talk about the PFI. Their innuendos, their suggestions. Oh, you got traffic coming from all these different directions when you have to cross the road at the PFI. No, you don't. No, you don't. Each crossing, traffic's coming from one direction. Anyway, air quality, well, PFI is better. Oh, wait, vehicle safety. Yeah, vehicle safety, but they don't consider that either. Well, it is challenging to estimate relative vehicle safety. You don't have both projects built and in the ground, and you can study them for several years to see which one's safer. Don't have the luxury of doing that. But there are tools available that can help estimate their relative safety performance, which they did not make any use of. One is called the Federal Highways, I think it's a surrogate safety analysis model or assessment model. Surrogate safety assessment model. It's a plug-in to VSEM. So it runs inside VSEM, and what it does is it quantifies vehicle interactions. They're the speed and rate and intensity of vehicle interactions, and from that you can deduce which design would be more prone to crashes. So obviously the higher the relative speed of interactions between vehicles that are close to each other having to stop or go around a vehicle, that's going to increase the likelihood of crashes between the designs. They could have used that. I've used it before. It's real easy to use, but no, they wouldn't do that. That's work. We don't want to make the bureaucrats work, right? Don't make the bureaucrats work. So they didn't use that tool, and I think if they had, it would have shown the PFI is safer because it doesn't get congested, so it's not going to have those high-speed vehicle interactions like you have at a congested intersection where traffic is stopped and you have traffic approaching stop traffic at a high speed. Right? That's where you get rear ends and side swipes. They also have the Highway Safety Manual to use. And the Highway Safety Manual, which is a federal guide, allows for assessing roadway safety based on geometric properties. So you look at the geometric features of the intersection, and it gives a estimation of what kind of safety conditions that feature will create. So they could have applied the Highway Safety Manual to designs to evaluate the relative safety. That was not done. What I note here is that the PFI has 4 fewer vehicle conflict points than the SPUI does at the signal, because the SPUI signal is going to function like a standard signal, and standard signal has 32 vehicle conflict points. The PFI has 28. Air quality, PFI is better because it doesn't get congested. Least visual impact, of course, the PFI, it's all at grade. The bridges, and there's 2 sets of bridges for the SPUI, because there's one set of bridges goes over the intersection, the SPUI intersection goes over 41, and the railroad track. So it has to span across a SPUI intersection, which is a big intersection, and the railroad track. It has to be 23 feet of vertical clearance over the railroad track, minimum, and there can't be any support structures within the SPUI intersection. That's a long span, and it's going to be a very deep structure. I'm guessing maybe 10-foot deep beams. Then you have the parapet on top. It's 23 feet, so it's like 35 feet in the air. So it's taller than a 3-story building in an area that is, like I said, you're looking at buildings that are 2-story buildings, tops. Most of the buildings in the area are 1-story. So it's going to just really stand out. So it's going to have a big visual impact. It's also going to become obscuring for local businesses, where people aren't going to be able to see signs, etc., or storefronts. FDOT doesn't care. Let's see. Transit friendly, PFI, because it doesn't get congested. I think the SPUI is probably better from the standpoint of providing, say, more direct access to and from a park and ride, if there's one, which the MPO board, they have their eyes on the northwest corner of the intersection with the SPUI alternative, because they're going to relocate a lumber yard. Hey, great place to put a park and ride. Right? That's them playing, God with people's lives. We'll just put a park and ride there. Well, okay. It's true that SPUI would probably give better access to such a facility, except US 41 is going to be a parking lot, and your buses are going to be stuck in queue along with everyone else. That's why I say that the PFI is more friendly for transit. Least disruptive during construction. That matters to local businesses. How long is the construction going to be? Well, the PFI is going to be less than half as much time to build than the SPUI. Shortest construction, disruption. So the PFI is less disruptive, and it's shorter construction duration. So by disruptive, the SPUI involves building foundations, doing a lot of earthwork to fill behind retaining walls, placing these enormous steel beams, pile driving. There's a lot of shifting traffic around, very disruptive, and it's going to take twice as long to build. Work zone safety, well, the PFI is safer It's all at grade, and a lot of the work at the PFI is on the outsides. Whereas for the SPUI, it's all the work is on the inside, because they're going to be putting it down the existing pavement, basically, is where they're going to be building the bridge and putting in retaining walls. Life cycle costs. Well, the PFI is cheaper to maintain and inspect. So life cycle cost is the ongoing cost to maintain and inspect the project, make repairs. Well, the SPUI has to be regularly inspected, probably every 2 years, and the retaining walls, and then they have to be maintained, have to be repaired, and those are going to be expensive. The PFI needs to be resurfaced every 10 years or so. So it's millions more in life cycle costs. They didn't include that cost. Better overall emergency response. I say the PFI is better because it doesn't get congested on 41. I mean, you could argue that if you're you know, an ambulance or a fire truck going over the bridge, yeah, okay, it's not delayed. Whereas at the PFI, well, it shouldn't be delayed very much either, since they can drive through the signal and the signals can be preempted. But it's not going to be congested on 41. So emergency vehicles can get through easier and not have to contend with stopped traffic. And hurricane evacuation, I don't really know for sure if the PFI would be better than the SPUI. It would depend on how they do the evacuation. I give it to the PFI because it's not congested. It shouldn't be congested under hurricane evacuation either. That could have been modeled. That could have been evaluated. They didn't do it. They didn't look at that at all. Not a consideration. So I've got the pictures here of these three individuals all laughing at me, laughing at the PFI. They think it's a hoot. This is as they are committing fraud. I say here that the PFI is an order of magnitude better than the SPUI, but who benefits? You know, with the SPUI, not the public, not the taxpayers. So who? Well, they do. They benefit. I think that the MPO board members are they've got their hands in the cookie jar. They're all they're doing the bidding of developers, land developers, and real estate investors. One of the board members, the chairman of the board, I think it's the chairman. He is like a real estate agent. So they're in it to enrich themselves. I'll talk more about them individually later. Gwen, as a bureaucrat in charge of FDOT District 7, the secretary of District 7, for him, he benefits by just, you know, eliminating the headache of having to deal with a new design like the PFI. So it's fraud for convenience sake. So I say in the process of picking the SPUI, they've committed official and professional unlawful misconduct. In a word, these officials are corrupt. Also, in the table, I've highlighted congestion versus no congestion to illustrate just how big of an impact congestion has on other things. It's a knock-on impact that severe congestion is going to have on other selection factors. So I have it listed here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 factors that I say are influenced by the fact that the SPUI is congested and the PFI is not. You never know that from their materials. They don't talk about congestion at all. They just pretend like it doesn't even exist. That's called lying by omission.